Whew. Welcome.
She sounds exasperated because it took a little while to get this technology to work.
Yes, we gotta love technology here. But welcome to Shebrew, our interview with Kisha. I am super excited about this, to be able to learn more about the role of a woman and what the scripture actually has to say when we're looking at it from a Hebrew perspective versus possibly what we have thought in the past. And so this is going to be great for both men and women. So we are glad you are here. And Kisha has a blog and also a website and a ministry that she does, and it's called Grace in Torah. So definitely go follow her, like her, do all the fun things, because we definitely want to support other people in their ministries. And yeah, just be able to help support other people. So Kisha, take it away.
Hey, I was telling Sarah and Mark, I have a puppy here. So if there's some interruptions or you hear squeaky toys, that is my 4-month-old lab that is teething really bad right now. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. If you see me just get up and move out of the screen and you hear a door open, that's him going out. So
yes, not a problem. My little girl, when I had her as a teething puppy, I didn't realize it, but she was teething on my end tables. So I have little puppy marks still on the end tables, and they're antique end tables. And so when I would leave the house, I would have to move the end tables off to the side so she would not chew on the end tables.
Okay, well, when I'm leaving, we're crating him, but yes, I don't want to. So far, he hasn't got my furniture.
Okay,
good, very good.
Keep shoving teething toys and bones and bully sticks and things like that in his mouth. So that's been helpful.
Exactly. So not a problem at all.
Good. Well, I'm excited to share with you about the Ezer Kenegdo. I wrote a series on Grace in Torah quite a few years ago. I think I started it in 2012, that series. And it still to this day gets more hits than anything. And I haven't updated it or revised it in a long time. So because we were going to do this interview, I actually was going back through and reading stuff. And I was like, oh, I need to change that. So I actually started revising part 3, because there's things that I just know now that I didn't know then. And eventually my goal, and this is what my husband's been wanting me to do for a long time, and I just haven't done it, is to put this in some sort of book format to help people. And it's not just for married people. This is really good for singles to understand too, because, you do have singles, divorced people, and also widows, for example, that still are going to function in this role simply because you're a woman. And I think it helps men and women come together and be able to communicate, because I believe that's the key to every marriage is good communication, so that you understand one another's essential roles right from the beginning, and you can hear one another. It alleviates a lot of the fear that can get in the way, or even anger sometimes, because your spouse, and this goes both ways, is meant to be like that iron sharpening iron. And they think differently by design than you do. And so they're going to see things from a different angle, and you do need to have conversations about things, because if you do come together as echad, as one, you're more likely to be successful in whatever that issue or situation or endeavor is.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I mean, we went through that, when we were dating and courting, we went through some of that teaching, and I remember reading some of your articles in regards to that, because I felt like it was really important for our communication to be able to communicate with each other, and to make sure that we have a good foundation, that if we have issues, we're able to go ahead and talk things through a little bit more, and also realize, okay, this is the freedom that actually gives you to be able to have, within your relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I know that a lot more people, even outside of Hebraic circles, in Christian circles, are starting to latch onto this and to see it for what it is, and it's benefiting them as well.
Yes.
But I will say this right up front too: there's a lot of people who don't like this message because it's not as traditional. If we go back through the histories, it seems to want to. I think the way people perceive it is that you're stepping on patriarchy, and then they get everything that's going on in our modern culture that is so against patriarchy and masculinity, but that's not the message.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to investigate it with your own Bible, doing a concordance search. I mean, because anyone can do this. So you don't have to read a book, you don't have to read my series, but just going back and spending a great deal of time right there in Genesis, particularly right before the fall, and then right afterwards, so that you can see what relationship was meant to look like before sin.
Yeah.
That's where we want to be. We want to try to work back into that area. We want restoration. We talk about that in all things. And so that's the way I see this message going forth.
Yeah.
It's restoration.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you've had a broken relationship before, you want to have that restoration in it. You know, either being married or being divorced, you still want to have some type of restoration or some type of resolve of like, okay, if you've been divorced, you want to be able to figure out and be like, okay, what can I do differently? You know, what is it that I need to go ahead and do differently? Because each person sometimes has a fault within it, you know, of some sort. And so it's like, okay, what can I do differently? You know, was I too much of a nag? You know, was I not a nag? Was I complacent? You know, did I always give in? Was I a pushover? You know, what was it that I can go ahead and change and be a little bit different?
Absolutely. And I think that is what, even after we're married, we need to constantly be working on. It's that inner work of ourselves, not trying to transform and change our spouse.
Yes.
It's always that inner work, because when you're looking on the outside and working on anyone, especially your spouse, it's not going to produce good fruit. It's just not going to work. That's not the way we were designed. And like you said, we all have a past. We all have issues where there may have been abuse or betrayal, or just not a proper role model to follow, whether that was your mother or your father. And we all have trauma of some sort that we need to work through and overcome. So better to do a lot of that before marriage, if at all possible, but a lot of it goes on afterwards for the both of you. So
yeah, that is true. That is true. So explain this a little bit. Explain that word. Explain the idea of it. You know, give us a little bit of a insight into that, because some people have not heard of this before, and so you know, it's good to be able to have a little bit of insight of what that is.
Okay, well, there's a lot of intricacy to this. Where you can look at not just the Ezer Kenegdo, but you can go back and look at the terms male and female, man and woman, the ish and the isha. All of those are going to be really helpful when you're talking about the biblical roles of men and women. But I think the one that has been misconstrued the most is the one we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the Ezer Kenegdo, where that is the helper suitable, or some versions just say helper, a help meet, but that's Genesis 2:18, where the Lord says, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And in Hebrew, that is Ezer Kenegdo. And there's not a perfect rule or a one word, even though we did make up the word help meet to try to explain these two words. But by looking at them, it really helps us to understand the dynamics between the man and the woman, because we know in the beginning, they were echad, they were one, male and female. That was Adam. When God created them, they were one entity. And so he took woman out of man, and she was going to be basically, essentially, a helper that opposes. In Hebrew, that's really what these terms mean. So Ezer, you probably are familiar with that term, even in names like Eliezer. That's his name means God is my help. And so that's what the word means in its most basic sense. It means to surround and protect.
Okay.
You have words like azara that come from that mean to enclose,
Yeah.
like in a protective circle.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that idea goes back to even what the word female means, nekuva. It has that same sort of connotation. And when you start looking through the different ways that a woman is expressed in scripture, they all kind of go back to this.
Yeah.
And you can even think of her, even with her childbearing capability, having a womb. It's a protected space that surrounds new life. That's what she does.
Yes.
And it's used, interestingly, in that verse in Genesis describing her. It's in the masculine form. There is a feminine form of it, but God chose to use that in the masculine form. And I think that in hindsight, that it was so that at a time like this, when we are getting closer to what I believe is the full redemption and the restoration of all these things would start coming forward just by simply looking at the language.
Yeah.
And Dr. John Garr, he has a series called Feminine and Free, and he actually thinks that too, that he used that intentionally because she's a power equal to him. Okay. Not the same as him. There's the difference. Mm-hmm. She is an equal power to him, intentionally different. She has different functions. Her mind works different. Her body works different, but that is all intentional. And then when the two come together, they actually display the image of God. So this is her strength, just like man has different strengths, because technically in Genesis 1, they were supposed to rule, take dominion, and subdue the earth and its creatures together.
Yeah.
Nowhere does it say they're supposed to rule over one another or dominate one another. It has to do with the creation.
Yes.
They're leaders, they're rulers of creation. That's what he created man and woman to do together. And they need one another to do it right. Not just one side, both sides.
Yeah.
And so I think the Kenegdo part of that phrase, Ezer Kenegdo, helps to explain that. Because really what it is, it's like a double preposition.
Yeah.
You have that key in the beginning, which means like, and then you have Kenegdo, which has to do with being in front of, opposite of. I think of them being face to face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking at one another face to face. And that's her role. Rashi actually said that she is his helper when, of course, he's walking properly with God, but then she opposes, being that opposite and opposer when he's not. Now, does that mean men don't do that for women? Well, of course they do. I mean, if you're looking in a mirror here, because that's really what is happening in marriage. If you see something on that other side you don't like, well, then you need to look in your own heart first. That's where that goes. If there's a something that's grinding and irritating, well, I need to look in my heart first and see where that's coming from. But there does need to be expression between the two, obviously. This is an issue that I'm having. It may be a little issue, but sometimes it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. Yes. And, so you need, even those little irritants, we need to take to one another and know that we're in a safe space when we're with our spouse. It should be, anyway, a safe space where I'm struggling with this. This is irritating me. I know it's something in me that God is working on because it's irritating me, but we need to work together and figure out what's going on. Is there an issue in my heart that needs to change? And I can tell you time and time again with the Lord, that has happened over and over again with my husband hurt when there's just been something that he habitually does that's just, at first it's no big deal. Then you're like, okay, that's irritating me. Okay, now every time I look, it's that same thing again and again. And I honestly believe with my whole heart that God blinded him to the fact that he was even doing these little things because I was the one with the problem. And so I would go to him and I would say, could you please not do this? And I'll give you an example. He has to wear a shirt and tie to work. So we have dry cleaning bills, and there's dry cleaning comes with the plastic. And I've given this analogy before, but my husband is really tall and I'm not. I'm really short. And so he would just yank the plastic off, wad it up in a ball and stick it at the top of the closet. And so eventually I would get this plastic monster is what I would call it up at the top of the closet. And I can't reach it. So I would have to go get a step ladder if I was going to get it down. And he could just reach up there and grab it. So I'm like, why is there always a plastic monster at the top of the closet? It was actually causing problems because it was stressing me out. Stupid little issues, right? These little foxes. Well, I kept nagging him about that. And that is nagging. I was nagging it because in reality, that plastic ball was not harming me. There was nothing about it that was harming me. And he did eventually, remove it once it got so big. But I just started praying about it. I'm like, Lord, why does the plastic monster bother me so bad?
Yeah.
And then when speaking through prayer with God and just repenting for letting something so small irritate me, destroy my peace. I mean, really, why was that destroying my peace?
Yeah.
It stopped bothering me. And guess what happened? Suddenly Kurt started removing this plastic monster. It never even built. For some reason, he was compelled to remember, oh, Kisha doesn't like this. And he stopped doing it. So that's those little things like that. We have to be able to not let it become a mountain when it's really just this tiny little granule of sand that is bothering us. But that's not exactly what the Ezer Kenegdo is. That was just an example of the face-to-face that you have between the spouses. It is coming before, looking in the mirror, because see, that was an action he was doing, but I was the one that kept seeing it. And when I finally looked at my own self, he stopped. The reflection changed because you know what? I changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah. So that neged, it does mean an equal, and it does mean an opposite, and it does mean sometimes to oppose or be against. And so you will do that with your husband, and he will do that with you. And this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, where are you? Alone. It says it's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
So that's the super simple version. Where this becomes a problem is where we look at it, marriage as a hierarchy. I don't look at marriage as a hierarchy because you're echad. You are one if you're face to face. And so there's going to be strengths that both sides have, and both are needed. Otherwise, it gets out of balance.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Skip Moen in his book, Guardian Angel, talks about her designed purpose is to help the husband be obedient. And at the same time, he's going to help you too. I mean, when he's talking about the woman in the guardian of angel, if we're thinking spiritually, men and women are the body and bride of Messiah. So anytime you're looking at anything feminine in the scripture, you can also spiritually look at that as the church, the assembly of God, the body, the bride. And so men have an immense amount to learn from this as well.
Yeah.
Because we are all feminine in that regard. And he is our husband. So in the human perspective, though, Men are not Christ. They're made in his image, of course, just like women are, but we're fallible. We're finite. We still struggle even after the point of salvation. We are constantly struggling with that old man who should be dead, who keeps getting up, rearing his head and getting in our way. And that's where we can really help one another. So with the Ezer Kenegdo, if she's allowed to function as the helper that is opposite, the helper that opposes, then yeah, she might point out a few little stains that you have too. But the idea is that's supposed to be a goad to help turn you back toward the proper path.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That definitely does. That does.
Yeah, I think I recall it being discussed in the book a little bit about perhaps the men are supposed to like know the things, know certain things, and the wife helps the men know what to do with things that they know. I don't know if
That's a good way to put it.
you know, I mean, like, I think that's kind of what I took away from it. The men are supposed to, you know, this is the information, you know, but the wife like, and this is what you do with it.
Yeah, I look at it like this, you know, and that goes back to what you're talking about, Mark. It's like the difference in the male and female. A male is zakar in Hebrew. It's the same. It comes from the verb zakar, which means to remember.
Remember.
And of course, that's not just a mental assent. It's to recall and then act upon. And that's what men do. And if you're recalling something, that is something you can even think of it in terms of time. It is past, or you could even say it is written. He is like a foundation. Yeah. Whereas the woman, the female, the nekuvah, that actually goes into the root of I think it is kavah. I'd have to go back to my notes and look, but it means to wait. And if you think about waiting, that's not past, it's future. So you can see both past and future with women. And you can also see how you can see places like in Ruth, where she is, she's going to build the house of Boaz, for example. Yeah. When we think of builders, we typically think of men, but women build where men are like the foundation. And it's because they really are, and most men will admit this freely, women tend to be a bit more spiritually minded than men. Not that that's better. I'm not saying that's better. Actually, you've got to have both. You've got to have one that's constantly counting the cost and thinking about what that foundation is, and so that it stays firm and steady in the ground. And you've got to have one that is willing to work really hard physically with their hands, where women tend to be a little bit more visionary with future. And you can see that even in her function with children. Children are the future. You know, she's rearing that, she's constantly working with the future. And I mean that literally, like in the sense of children, but I also mean that spiritually in the sense of ministry and spiritual work. Women do that. They tend to be better with spiritual babies than men, just because they tend to be able to deliver the message in a more nurturing, comforting way. Yeah. And I often put it to people like this: women have the ability to eat meat and produce milk. And I think that that is very much needed. And milk is for babies. When you look up those scriptures that actually you needing the milk of the word, there's a lot of flesh issues going on. Just like with kids and puppies. There's lots of little training issues that still need to take place. So it's more nurturing in that regard. Mm-hmm. But firm foundation with male, they represent more the past, where women are the future. And then you can think of putting them together, and then you're right there in the present working. Yeah. And that really defines
Yeah.
Yod He Vav He. I mean, he is the
Mm.
one, he's the one who is, who was, and is to come. And so it's like you're functioning together in a sense of time with him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Very good.
That's very true, because he's supposed to be our foundation, you know?
Yes.
And when we look at, what we talk about within, the singles is you need to lay the foundation. That's why we created Shebrew website, is because that's the foundation of you're following Torah. You're wanting to find a spouse that follows Torah, then guess what? Join a dating website that everybody is following Torah, because you're laying that foundation that's there. And then you can build upon that, of what that needs to be, because each relationship is going to be a little bit different, but at least you have that level foundation of, okay, all of us follow Yeshua, on this. I'm not having to dig through the weeds to try to find the one person that might be on this dating site that follows Torah,
Right.
versus this is already pre there.
Yeah.
Which is so important and will alleviate so many problems of the future of being like unequally yoked.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And kind of back to the idea of the Ezer Kenegdo, but there was this verse that I was trying to pull up earlier, and it's in First Peter, and this is pulling a verse out of, it's just something that he says. You'd have to read the whole passage, but he says, "You husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in understanding." So, trying to understand this is maybe trying to help the husbands to actually be able to live with their wives with understanding them and, what their role is. And, being able to actually be on point and do, what you as a husband is supposed to do, so that they can go ahead and do the things that they are supposed to do. So you can together, like you were talking about, together, be able to function properly.
Yes. And we tend to function and think most often in our strengths. And men typically, like being that firm foundation, men are typically, and I am speaking generally, because there is crossovers.
Yeah.
I mean, both men and women have both male and female sex hormones and chromosomes and all this stuff. So there is always crossover, but men are typically the more logical.
Yeah.
Women they focus, even baby boys, they've done plenty of tests on this. Baby boys focus mostly on objects, things. Baby girls focus on faces. They're relational. So your wife is designed to be relational. Generally, she will have a larger circle of even friends than you do. Is that true, Mark? Mark's shaking his head. and women, there's a great book called Men Are Waffles and Women Are Spaghetti. Have you guys read that book?
I have. It is a very good book. Yes, it's very similar to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah. Well, I like the brain speaking aspect of it, because it's so true. Yes. And it took me a few years when I got married to kind of understand this, because women's brains are like spaghetti. It's like spaghetti spilled all over a plate. You can't tell where one noodle begins and the other one ends on the plate, because in everything in her life, she sees connection and relationship between those things. And so when she's trying to tell you a simple story about something that happened to her when she went to the store, she's going to give you probably way more detail than you even want to listen to. That's because she sees them all connected. Yeah. Where men are like waffles, they're like the little boxes. And so if they have their work box, they have their rest box, so they need to be in the proper box. And women jump around from box to box to box, and it's like, stop it, that sort of thing. So it hurts communication. And so like when my husband first would come home from work, I'm like, blah, 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 just tell it. And he was still not quite transitioned into his at home relax box. And I learned that I need to give him a little space to switch boxes before I start just unloading on my day on him or whatever's going on. But knowing that is normal, but also being respectful of the other is, again, just part of the keys to communication with marriage. And so living with your woman in an understanding or a knowledgeable way, just knowing that, you know what, she's not completely illogical. She's really wired differently. In the midst of that spaghetti, I guarantee you there's some golden nuggets there for you, but you might just need to have a conversation. You'd be like, we're going to set aside time so we can unload this spaghetti plate. But right now I need to take my shoes off, chill for a few minutes, that sort of thing. It's so much better. And women also, this is another problem I see a lot, and I had it. Women, we have problems. The first thing we want to do is talk about it. And we want to outline all these little things. Oh, sorry, that's my husband. He's probably coming in the door. So there's gonna be a little barking. But we would have and I would tell him, this is wrong, and da 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 da, and I'd list all this stuff. Well, I didn't understand that he was internalizing all these things, and it sounded as if this is all your fault. Fix my problem, because men are fixers. They want to fix stuff, and it took me a while for us to understand. Okay. You're not asking me to fix this, because, he wants to immediately give you a solution. Well, if you just did this, this, and this, and she's like, no, but that would hurt so-and-so's feelings, whatever's going on. We're thinking of a lot of dynamics, but that really also helped our communication. So her strengths are always going to be focused around relationships, all relationships that she's connected. Where men are going to be, their strengths are going to be firm, strong, foundational type things. Of we need to do this or we need to do that so that we can get from point A to point B, or to build better. And so he helps ground her, but she helps open up and give him new vision on things. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've found that, a lot with my relationship with Sarah. I would never be able to see certain avenues of thought without her saying, well, did you think about this? I mean, like, have you even considered, this? And usually, like, you're right, it has to do with, the relationships with people. Instead of things being so black and white, basically,
Yes.
So,
but you can also see where if it was all one-sided, either way, it wouldn't be good.
Very true. Very true. If you lean too far to the right or to the left, then you end up in trouble. But each other, meeting in the center, right? That helps you to be able to be an even keel.
Yeah, and that's not just with your relationship. I think it affects all the relationships you have together with groups and communities. So I think it spreads out, especially it's meant to, and of course in the body, and to function better. So any board or any leadership circle, particularly, there does need to be, in my opinion, both men and women, because you're going to get both strengths there that are going to give something, offer something very valuable to how to go forward, how to take care of people, how to function better and lead better in general.
Yeah,
I think that's a really great point. We were just with some friends studying through a few chapters in First Timothy, not wanting to really go there or anything, but like, just that simple point, would help people to understand a whole lot better. If you don't have that feminine point of view and you're only coming from a male point of view, you're going to be missing out on so much insight.
Yes, and typically it's going to be something that's going to be detrimental to a relationship. When men are left out, it gets a little crazy because then you start losing order, structure, foundations. Yeah. And when women are left out, you start losing relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have the relationship aspect of that. I mean, we see that within communities at times where there's not
Yes.
the relationship part, that's being done. Everything is so structured that there's no
Mhm.
relationship, there's no fellowship, there's no, aspect of the love kind of thing that's needed to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like your analogy of the waffles and spaghetti. We were literally just talking about that last night, actually, because I was telling him that my brain, I literally have, tabs on a computer. It's like I don't just have one or two, there's like six, and they're constantly there. And so at times he'll do this funny thing of like, yeah, he'll
Just
swipe,
trying to swipe those windows clean. Let's close a couple windows here.
because we have iPhones. And so, you swipe them to the left or to the right to clean it out, clean out your
Yeah.
windows that you have on your phone. And he does that because there's constantly something going on. And it's all relationship related, kind of intertwining, kind of thing that you have to unwind. And
Yeah.
I'm like, aren't you thinking anything? He's like, no, I'm in
No,
my empty box.
not
Like,
really.
I'm
Oh, I
not
know.
thinking anything.
And that blows us away, Mark. We do not understand that box whatsoever.
I know we were talking about it, and and just the other night, I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you can't just do this. But it's one of the things that I've had to learn. Like the analogy of the windows that are open on your computer, your brain. Guys can hit the X on a computer on a paint and just close it out. It's done. But
Right.
I've had to come to realize that just because I can do that doesn't, like, her window is still open. So
Right.
I mean, sometimes I will say, well, is there anything, can we just talk about it? Can we do anything to maybe help you close that window out so that it's just not continually to running and processing in the background?
Oh, that is a great analogy too.
Yes.
Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now, there's probably like 4 windows open on my computer. I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like before doing this video, I literally had 5 different windows open. And I was like, well, maybe this is why it's not working, is because there's so many windows happening on my computer. Let me close
Yeah.
out all these other windows that I don't need right now. And let's see
Yeah.
if that works, And it's the same
Yes.
thing in regards to our brains, where it's
Mhm.
like you have to sometimes write out a list. I
Yep.
mean, for a while, I literally would have to go to sleep and I would have to think of a blank piece of paper to help me go to sleep because
Yeah.
I had such a struggle with constantly going that I never allowed my brain to just rest. So I actually had to think of a blank piece of paper. And once in a
Yeah.
while, I would see myself writing on it and I would be like, no, and erase it or crumple it back up. Like in my brain, this is what's going on in my brain is I'm
Yep.
crumpling the piece of paper back up, throwing it and getting a new piece of paper, and allowing myself to just rest,
Yeah.
and I think that's why I think it's really good that we have the Sabbath to be able to do that, and I have to remind myself that that's my blank piece of paper,
Yep.
it's a
Yes.
time to reset. It's a time to refocus again and to have one window open, and that's it.
Yes. And so see, you're describing learning from one another's strengths and weaknesses there.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do all the time,
Yes.
constantly. And I think it's really good for singles, especially those who have never been married, to understand, oh yeah, these dynamics, you don't think they're going to play a role, but they play a huge role because it affects all the little things, and the little things add up to be big things.
Big things. Yes, I agree with you, and I will have to add that book to our list because I have a list of different books that I recommend people to read, while they're dating, while they're going out, and even certain times read while you're even in a relationship together,
Yes.
because then you're able to talk about it and be like, okay, is your brain like this? Or are you like this? And figure some of that out because then you're able to communicate with that person directly of how they want to be communicated with, or
Yes.
what their dynamic works. Because like you said, some people are able to put some ladies' brains, they can go to an empty box,
They
or
can.
go
Yep.
to a certain box. And guys' brains sometimes are all over the place, like you said, like spaghetti. And
Mhm.
so it's a matter of, okay, how are you in this one category? Because maybe you're like this in one category, and maybe you're like this in a different category.
Yes.
So it's a matter of figuring out what you are in that relationship, and yeah, so that's good. I'm gonna have to write down in that book.
Yeah. And if you really, and what you're describing is being loving, honoring, and respecting your spouse. And anything that you can do to better that relationship and help and to understand one another better, so that therefore you communicate better. So, okay, well, that me doing this, you're actually hearing, that's not my intent, but you're hearing this as one thing and it's not. Being able to figure those things out. And this Bible is full of relationships. We see the good, the bad, the ugly, how that all plays out. But the main thing that we learn is when it's good, when they're functioning properly, both parties, or you could think wider as in the community, is operating sacrificially, meaning I'm putting your need before my need. And if we constantly have that attitude toward one another, even if you hit bumps, you're going to do well. I mean, every true leadership role in scripture, it's not someone that is dominating or taking control like a beast outside in the field.
Yeah.
It is a servant role. I mean, that is what Yeshua showed us above all. And he served those who were in the realm of sin and death, rebellious, lost. I mean, and gave everything for all of us.
Yes.
And so, yes, men need to love women sacrificially, and women need to respect their husbands, but those two things are reciprocal. It's not, it's like, which one comes first? They just work together.
Yeah.
If you've got one, you'll likely have the other.
Yeah.
And if you're learning one, then that other one is going to come into play.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. It's like we both are, we serve one another. And by serving one another, we're serving us, the Echad, the one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if that's functioning, then guess what? We're going to be able to take it outward.
Yes.
Into our communities.
Yep. That's true. It's very true.
Yeah, because that's the whole point. It's one of the things I was actually kind of jotting some notes down from one of the tour portions that we're looking at right now is being able to come together and function. And that's great. I mean, you want to serve each other and make each other, happy, full of joy, things, but it's ultimately about, like taking that out.
Yeah.
Taking that out to the body and being able to build other people up together, being able to function in that purpose together. But it starts just the two of you having to have that right relationship so that you can go and do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. That's true. Well, awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate you, coming and talking. Is there any other last words that you have that you want to go ahead and share? You gave a lot, like, honestly, like, people are going to have to go back and take notes. There was a couple people who said that they're going to have to watch the replay because they couldn't get it live, but there was a lot of good information that it's like, go back and retake notes again.
And there is, and I gave more just practical advice than like I did in the series, the biblical role of women, where you go through all the terms. And like I said, you can do this with a concordance with your free online Bible program in your Bible.
Yeah.
But doing that, learning both sides of that equation is going to help us understand what it is to be a Echad, not just with a spouse, but as a body, because we've got to be able to function as on a greater scale, taking care of one another. And to me, that key is sacrificial love. It has to be, and sacrifice means it's going to cost you something.
Mhm.
And so what is it going to cost you? It's going to cost you flesh, your ego, all of those things. But it does take some time to get there. I mean, like I said, if you've been betrayed, if you've been deeply wounded, some of that just takes time to process. And it's okay if you're like, I just can't even trust. Well, start there. Just start there. And eventually knowing where the goal post is, that's my goal, is to get to being able to be vulnerable with someone in the future and trust them and trust the Lord with my relationship, and knowing that I'm going to keep those constant lines of communication open. And when I look in the mirror, which would be my other, and I see something I don't like, I immediately need to know, there's something in here in my heart that needs to be worked on. And that will help take care of that stain that I see over there. If I need to go here first. And that's true on both sides, man or woman, doesn't matter which one you are. If there's something I don't like, I need to look inward first. I think that we're much closer to getting back to those roles in the beginning, because when you look at the fall, and maybe we could talk about that in a future program, and you see what happened, you see the questions, because before they were, anything was cursed, God asked them both questions, and both of them failed horribly at everything we just talked about. They both blamed somebody else. Neither one of them was willing to step up and say, I'll take the blame. I'll take the punishment. This was my fault. Nobody did that. They found themselves afraid and naked and ashamed. And I wonder how different it would have been if they both had come forward and said, I screwed up. I royally screwed up. This is my fault. Because that would have been more like a repentance if they had done that. Okay. And we don't see that. And so then afterwards, you see those consequences to sin. I like that better than the word curse. It was a consequence to sin. Basically, if you're going to go down that path, if this is the way the dynamics of your relationship is going to work, let me tell you what's going to happen. And he does. He tells them what's going to happen. And we even see it again repeated when you get to Cain and Abel. Again, this is a relationship between brothers, but it's still a relationship. And he follows that same path. It's like going the way of death rather than life. But we can talk about that later if you want to.
That would be great.
I think that's
be
important to understand, even like with the roles. Well, let's look at what it looks like when we aren't doing what we're supposed to, and how can we rectify it. Again, to me, it's restoration. It's going back to the beginning before those things happened. And when I see a repeat of it in my life, if I'm blaming and shaming, you know what? It's not the way. It's not going to produce the fruit that I want to see, which is life. It's going to produce something's going to die. And hopefully it won't be my relationship.
Yep. That is so true. That is one thing I talk about. And that's one thing that I got help with after my divorce is I saw a professional counselor, and she's like, Sarah, she said, you have to break the pattern of why you continue to date the same kind of people and why you continue to have that same pattern. You have to figure out that pattern and break that pattern, and don't fall for that pattern again, or that trap, whatever it might be. You have to figure out what that is to be able to stop it, and to be able to look at yourself of like, okay, why do I continue to do this? What is it that I need to go ahead and change so I can stop doing this, and figure that out. And that was, that was huge for me, to be able to figure that out. And Mark's different, so that's good. It worked out to be able to figure some of that stuff out.
Maybe it worked. We'll definitely hope so. I just love you breaking it down to sacrificial love,
Yeah.
Yeah.
personal responsibility, just taking
Yes.
responsibility for your part
Yeah.
in, I mean, whatever's going on in your life, own it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and do what has to be done to try and fix it.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know if I've ever shared this on a video. I had somebody give me some advice before I got married, older gentleman, much my senior. And he said, I'm going to give you one piece of advice, and it'll lead you to a happy marriage if you will follow this piece of advice. I was like, sure, what is it? He's like, you need to love her more than she loves you. And I was
Wow.
like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
Yes. And you know what? The reality is when you do that, you're loving yourself. That's what Paul said,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she is me, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Because when you look at that, you really figure out it's a mirror, you know, like you said, it really helps you to realize, okay, I need to look inner in regards to this, you know, if there's an off balance of some sort. And so it's just so good that it's like mind blowing, you know, in a way. And it's such a good foundation to be able to lay in the beginning of a relationship, you know, and to build upon that and to go on to that and be like, okay, so this is the foundation. Let's build the first layer, you know, let's build the first story, and then let's go to the second story and go on from there to be able to understand this is what it is, you know. And a lot of times it is, you have to go back and look at yourself of like, okay, what do I need to go ahead and change? How can I break this pattern? And what is it that needs to get done, you know? And yeah.
Amen. Because if you're looking at a mirror and you see something you don't like, you don't wipe the mirror off.
No.
No, you know, and that's what we try to do in our relationships. And
Yes.
and really it's like, oh no, that's on my shirt.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's on my shirt. Or that's on my face. Like, okay, why do I have that black dot on my face? You know, and it's like, it's not on the screen. You can try to wipe the screen, but
Yeah,
that's not going to do it. It's not there. Yeah.
you're right.
That's great.
Amen.
Oh, that's good.
It's a great picture.
Oh my gosh, that's good. Okay, people. Hopefully you guys got a lot. I'm hoping you guys took some notes. Go back and rewatch it. Make sure you go like Kisha's page. I think you have a page as well, don't
Yeah.
you? Okay.
It's on
Yeah,
Facebook.
go like her page on Facebook so you guys are able to find her again. And of course, her website has more detailed information. And like she said, she's going back through it again and re-adding some more things. And so that's going to be awesome. And we also have a link to it on our website as well. So if you go to Shebrew.com and if you go to resources, we have a direct link there to her website of the articles that she has written about this. So you guys are able to go ahead and find that there as well. So I'm very grateful. And thank you very much, Kisha. We will definitely have you back to talk about the beginning, you know, of in the beginning, I guess. And so that will be really good to be able to come back to and discuss again. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, on Facebook world. And of course, you guys can continue to go back to this video again and reference it as you need to. So I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll chat with you guys later. Bye.